The film begins by introducing two best friends, Peter and Lee, who live in the Australian countryside. They're practically inseparable. Despite spending nearly all their time together, the two have completely different personalities. Lee is fearless and never backs down from anything. In fact, the more dangerous or extreme something is, the more he enjoys it. Peter, on the other hand, is much more cautious and always thinks things through before taking action. One day, Lee convinces Peter to have some fun by trying to stop a passing truck, just like a couple of teenagers looking for excitement. Peter is too scared to join in and can only watch from the sidelines. Lee successfully stops the truck, but the driver punches him for what he did. Even so, the incident doesn't shake his confidence at all. Instead, Lee feels even prouder of his courage. Peter and Lee share an incredibly close friendship. Lee is so close to Peter's family that Peter's parents treat him like one of their own. Almost every day, the two of them hang out and explore new places, always searching for their next adventure and anything they think might be fun. One day, feeling incredibly bored, Lee grabs onto the back of a passing pickup truck for a risky ride. Seeing how dangerous it is, the driver pulls over and invites Peter and Lee to come along. He ends up taking them to the beach, where they see people surfing for the very first time. Watching the surfers ride the waves, Peter is amazed. He thinks surfing is an incredible sport because it allows people to conquer the ocean. From that moment on, he no longer sees the water as something to fear. After returning from the beach, Peter and Lee become determined to try surfing for themselves. Using a piece of discarded styrofoam, they build their own homemade surfboard, and to their surprise, it works pretty well. From that day forward, they discover a new hobby that they absolutely love. As their passion for surfing grows, they decide they want a real surfboard. To earn enough money, they take on a side job chopping firewood. After several days of hard work, they finally save enough to buy their very first used surfboard. Without asking their parents for help, they head straight to the beach to try it out and spend countless hours surfing whenever they can. One day, they meet a man who is surprised by how skilled they are, especially considering how young they are. The man introduces himself as Sandu. He gives them a ride and offers to let them store their surfboards in his garage, since he lives just a short distance from the beach. At first, Peter and Lee are hesitant because they worked so hard to earn the money for those surfboards. But after seeing Sandu's garage filled with surfboards, they realize they can trust him and decide to leave their boards there. One day, Lee calls out for Sandu, but no one answers. When he peeks inside the house, he realizes that Sandu is spending some private time with his wife. Feeling awkward, Peter and Lee decide to leave and skip surfing that day. The next day, they return to pick up their surfboards. However, the only person home is Ava, Sandu's wife. Ava tells them that Sandu has gone to Bali in search of better waves. Peter and Lee don't think much of it. They simply grab their surfboards and head back to the beach to go surfing. The waves are especially big that day. Lee gets even more excited and charges straight into the powerful surf without hesitation. Peter, on the other hand, is much more cautious and a little nervous. Even so, he eventually manages to conquer the waves and even shows off a little in front of Lee. Around that time, a girl named Kui finally reveals that she's had a crush on Peter for a long time. Although Peter doesn't really feel the same way, he doesn't want to hurt her feelings, so he tells her that he likes her too. From that moment on, they officially start dating. As the days go by, Peter and Lee visit Sandu's house almost every day to pick up their surfboards. One day, Sandu joins them for a surfing session while trying out a new surfboard he recently bought in Bali. After watching Sandu ride the waves with incredible skill, Peter and Lee begin to suspect that he's a professional surfer who travels in search of the world's best waves, including those in Bali. Their suspicions are confirmed when they accidentally discover several old surfing magazines with Sandu featured on the cover. When Sandu arrives, they immediately compliment him, but for some reason, he becomes upset after realizing that Peter and Lee found his old magazines. Fortunately, his anger doesn't last long, and afterward, he gives them a ride home. Before they part ways, Sandu tells Peter and Lee to get ready because in a few days he's going to take them to an incredible surfing spot. The news gets both of them excited. The following day, Sandu surprises them with new surf shirts as a gift. Peter and Lee are thrilled. To reach the spot, they have to hike for several minutes. The place is known as Barney. Although Barney is famous as one of the best surfing locations, it also comes with serious risks. Sharks have been spotted there on several occasions, and some surfers have even been injured. Hearing that makes Lee a little nervous. Even so, he decides to follow Sandu and face his fears. Peter, on the other hand, chooses to play it safe and stays away from the biggest waves. Seeing Peter's hesitation, Sandu encourages him by saying that one day he'll find the courage that's already inside him. The next morning, Peter stops by Sandu's house to see him, but Sandu isn't home. Instead, Peter notices Ava asleep in a chair on the front porch. That's when he spots a long scar on her knee. A few moments later, Ava wakes up and realizes Peter is there. She explains that Sandu is away and won't be back for a few days. The two chat for a while before Peter heads home. A few days later, Peter and Lee meet up with Sandu again. That day, they're surprised to discover an old photograph revealing that Eva used to be a highly talented competitive skier. Sadly, her career came to an end after she suffered a serious knee injury. Not long afterward, Sandu challenges Peter and Lee to take on the massive waves that usually arrive in March. They have about 15 days to prepare and train. Sandu repeatedly warns them to practice seriously because those waves are enormous and can be extremely dangerous if they're not ready. At last, the long-awaited day arrives, but the day before, Lee is involved in an accident. He falls off a ladder and injures his arm. He's devastated because he won't be able to take on the giant waves. Even so, he still comes to watch Peter and Sandu surf. As usual, Peter gets nervous before paddling out. Fortunately, Sandu has his own way of helping Peter relax and believe in himself. From a distance, Lee can only watch as the two of them ride the beautiful waves. Sometime later, Lee recovered much faster than expected. He returned to training and improved at an incredible pace. Day by day, his surfing skills kept getting better. Meanwhile, Peter still struggled to overcome his fear. Even though Sandu continued to coach him, Peter still wasn't brave enough to take on the bigger waves. One day, Peter visited Sandu's house by himself. As it started raining, Ava arrived carrying some groceries and asked Peter to help her. That's when she told him that Sandu and Lee had gone to the beach to surf. Peter felt disappointed because no one had told him about their plans. Seeing that Peter was upset, Ava invited him inside to get out of the rain and gave him some dry clothes to change into. As they spent more time together, the atmosphere became more intimate. Unexpectedly, Ava became attracted to Peter, and Peter realized that Ava wanted to fack. At first, he held back out of respect for Sandu, but eventually their relationship became more complicated, and the two of them made a decision they would later regret. From that moment on, they secretly met several more times to fack whenever the house was empty. This continued for several weeks. However, as time passed, they both realized that what they were doing was a serious mistake. Then one day, Peter noticed that something seemed different about Ava. She revealed that she was pregnant. When Peter asked who the father of the baby was, Ava admitted that she couldn't say for certain. She explained that the only people she had fack with were her husband Sandu and Peter. Realizing how serious everything had become, she asked Peter not to visit her anymore and ended their relationship because she believed it had all been a terrible mistake. Peter was overwhelmed with guilt. To clear his mind, he went out to the ocean and finally faced the massive waves he had always feared. To his surprise, that was the very moment he conquered both the waves and his own fear. A few days later, after school, Peter ran into Sandu, who had some wonderful news. Sandhu happily told him that he was going to become a father. Peter pretended to be surprised, even though he was carrying a very complicated secret inside. After years of marriage without being able to have a child, the news meant everything to Sandhu. Sandhu then invited Peter to start surfing with him again like they used to, but Peter declined, saying that he had made up his mind and would never surf again. With that decision, the story of the film comes to an end. And that's the story of Breed Movie. So what did you think of today's recap? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like.